The mail carrier froze when he saw me in the driveway, barefoot, clutching a shovel in one hand and a half-eaten sandwich in the other. I wasn't mad at him, just stunned by the letter he'd just handed me. It claimed I'd built a luxury swimming pool in my backyard and owed the Willow Creek Estates HOA $50,000. I live alone, grow tomatoes in old pots, and haven't swum since the 80s. Yet, according to the Willow Creek Estates HOA, I had apparently erected a sparkling aquatic palace behind my shed without approval. That was just the beginning. The envelope bore the official HOA letterhead, a violation code, and a fine breakdown resembling something out of a mob shakedown. I sank onto my porch swing, tore into the rest of my sandwich, and stared numbly at the number, $50,000. For a pool that didn't exist, on land I'd owned outright for 35 years. My shed sat on a dusty, uneven plot of land hardly suitable for even a kiddie pool. The only blue thing back, there was a faded tarp covering some hay bales to shield them from the rain. No water, no pipes, just dirt, and my quiet dreams of retirement. I drove to the HOA office, located in a former community center that now felt like a fortress of mismatched chairs and passive-aggressive posters nagging residents about grass length. I demanded to see someone from the board. A woman with flawless, severe hair and a smile as sharp as broken glass emerged. Victoria Sterling, naturally. The HOA president. She waved my violation notice like it was some tired joke. "Mr. Jenkins," she said coolly, "your unpermitted pool is right here in the satellite photos." Her computer screen showed a blurry satellite image, highlighting a vague blue smudge behind my shed. "That's a tarp," I stated flatly, expecting her to realize the mix-up. She didn't even blink. "The fine stands unless you can prove otherwise. The hearing date is on the notice." She turned away, dismissing me completely. Outside, my neighbor Walter Finn, a weathered farmer type, pulled me aside. "You're not the first," he warned quietly. "Victoria finds something on your land, twists the rules, slaps you with fines. Last year, she called Dave's perfectly fine shed a structural hazard, forced him to rebuild half of it." My stomach churned. I'd always ignored the usual HOA nonsense, paid my dues on time, kept my lawn reasonably tidy. But now they'd come for me, swinging a $50,000 sledgehammer based on a lie. I wouldn't just roll over. That night, I went out back with a flashlight and checked under the tarp. Dry hay, maybe evidence of some squirrels, definitely no pool. My dog, Buddy, watched me like I'd finally lost my mind. Maybe I had. Morning brought another official letter, this one from the county clerk. A lien had been placed on my property. My hands shook. They weren't just fining me. They were threatening my home, my entire life's work, everything I owned. I made coffee, stared out the window at the innocent-looking shed, then pulled an old, thick folder from my desk. Blueprints, maps, permits from my 40 years working as a civil engineer. I designed entire subdivisions. I knew property law like the back of my hand. Victoria Sterling wanted a war? She'd get one. I'd fight her with paper, proof, and the kind of stubborn grit that comes from decades spent building municipal wastewater systems. This wasn't about the money anymore. It was about truth against her petty little empire. At the county assessor's office, a dim building that smelled of dust and old wax, I requested all records pertaining to my parcel of land. The clerk, Brenda Mills, handed me a stack of documents thick as a brick. The crucial inspection form, supposedly justifying the lien, lacked a licensed assessor's signature, just a set of initials, dated on a Sunday when the county office was closed. The pool's location was confirmed by a grainy, free online map screenshot with a sloppy red circle drawn around my tarp. Brenda leaned in and whispered, "Victoria's cousin, Gary, used to work in this department. He's the one who pushed these questionable satellite assessments into the official protocol before he left." My jaw tightened. This wasn't just incompetence. It looked like coordinated fraud. Back home, Walter shared more stories. Victoria had fined a widow for planting unapproved rose bushes, another neighbor for a mailbox she deemed hazardous. Her trick was leveraging vague bylaws, twisting them into fines just small enough that hiring a lawyer seemed too expensive, but big enough to really hurt regular people. I dragged the heavy tarp completely off the hay bales, exposing the bare, dusty dirt underneath. Then, I called the local news station. A young reporter, Sarah Miller, arrived, clearly eager for a juicy small-town scandal. I showed her the violation notice, the infamous blue tarp lying nearby, the lien documents, and the bone-dry, pool-esque ground. She filmed everything, interviewed Walter about his own run-in over a fence fine, and then, for dramatic effect, jumped up and down vigorously on the dirt patch for the camera, declaring, "This alleged $50,000 pool seems to be nothing more than hay and dust." Buddy barked his enthusiastic approval. The story aired that evening, and Sarah's theatrical dirt jump quickly went viral online. Social media had a field day, relentlessly mocking Victoria Sterling's killer pool. That night, Victoria's sleek black SUV crept slowly past my house before pulling into my driveway. She stormed up my walkway, heels clicking angrily on the concrete, her face twisted in fury. "You've humiliated the entire board," she hissed. I calmly pointed to the empty patch of dirt where the tarp had been. "You humiliated yourself, Victoria," I replied evenly. "I just showed everyone the truth." Her face flushed crimson. "This isn't over," she spat, nearly backing into my mailbox as she sped away. Days later, a summons arrived for an emergency HOA meeting. I went, ready for a showdown. The community hall smelled faintly of stale coffee, its slightly lopsided American flag seeming to mock the solemn faces of the board members seated at the front. Victoria sat center stage, flanked by the 4 other board members, including a visibly nervous young man named Kevin Marsh. I stood and methodically detailed the whole absurd situation: the tarp, the questionable inspection form, the improper lien, and then I played the now viral news clip on my phone. Murmurs rippled through the crowded room. I turned directly to the young board member. "Mr. Marsh," I asked clearly, "did you personally inspect my land for this supposed pool before signing off on that form?" He fidgeted, glancing nervously sideways at Victoria. I was told to sign the form, not to ask questions," he admitted quietly, his voice barely audible. The room erupted. Neighbors started shouting out their own grievances: unfair fines over rose bushes, citations for kids' bikes left out, threats about mailbox heights. Victoria banged her gavel repeatedly, but it was completely ignored in the rising chaos, a chaos entirely of her own making. I slipped out quietly during the commotion. Back in my workshop, Buddy resting comfortably at my feet, I carefully studied my property's original blueprint. A thin line marked a water main running from the HOA clubhouse, crossing a small corner of my property. There was no recorded easement, just an informal favor I'd allowed decades ago, something never formally documented. I located the buried access hatch right on my property line. I went to the hardware store, purchased a perfectly legal shut-off valve, installed it properly on my side of the connection, and turned the valve firmly to the off position. By noon the next day, Victoria's enraged voice could be heard echoing across the neighborhood as she complained loudly about the clubhouse's suddenly dry fountain and completely non-functioning toilets. I sipped my coffee peacefully on my porch, Buddy's head resting on my boot, watching the HOA's frustrated landscapers scrambling around the clubhouse grounds in confusion. Predictably, Victoria marched straight up to my porch. "You cut off our water," she accused, pointing towards the clubhouse. I calmly asked if she happened to have a copy of the easement agreement allowing the HOA's water line to cross my private land. Naturally, she had none. "Drop the lien, rescind the fine completely, and issue a formal, public apology to me, and then we can discuss the water situation," I replied evenly. She sputtered about legal action and stormed off again, fuming. That night, a plain white envelope appeared mysteriously on my porch. Inside was an anonymous printout of an email. It was from Victoria Sterling to her cousin, Gary, the former county employee. "Just fine him into submission. I want that field cleared for the new pavilion project anyway. Just call the tarp a pool on the assessment. Get it done." I carefully locked the email printout in my safe. It was pure dynamite. Kevin Marsh visited me later that evening, looking relieved but still anxious. He confessed that Victoria had systematically bullied him into signing blank inspection forms for months, even threatening his own pending permit for a small shed addition if he didn't comply. "You're not scared of her," he said, a mix of admiration and exhaustion in his voice. "I'm just so tired of being scared all the time." He looked around at my quiet house. "This isn't just about you anymore, Mr. Jenkins," Kevin said earnestly. "It's for every single neighbor she's silenced and pushed around." Armed with the email and Kevin's willingness to testify, I went back to the county clerk's office. I filed a formal grievance against the Willow Creek Estates HOA and against Victoria Sterling personally, citing fraud, abuse of power regarding the lien, unethical conduct, and misuse of infrastructure, the water line. I included a notarized copy of the incriminating email. Brenda Mills grinned widely as she processed the paperwork. "This," she commented with satisfaction, "is going to start something really big." Meanwhile, the clubhouse lawn began to yellow noticeably as the sprinklers remained stubbornly dry. Victoria strutted around the neighborhood, loudly promising imminent lawsuits against me for damages, but the whispers and knowing glances among neighbors were growing louder and bolder. My lawyer, Diane Foster, a sharp, retired prosecutor with a well-known distaste for HOA overreach, reviewed all the evidence, including the email and Kevin's statement. She called it clear-cut, actionable fraud. With Diane's guidance, I canvassed the neighborhood again, this time formally collecting signed affidavits detailing other residents' stories of petty harassment and questionable fines. Unapproved garden trellises, improperly displayed flagpoles, demands to repair hairline cracks in sidewalks that were barely visible. Diane then filed a comprehensive lawsuit against the HOA and Victoria Sterling, alleging fraud, defamation, conspiracy, and abuse of power. It demanded the immediate, court-ordered removal of the lien, the formal voiding of the $50,000 fine, plus punitive damages. Victoria clearly panicked. Her lawyer quickly reached out to Diane, cautiously inquiring about the possibility of a quiet settlement. I simply instructed Diane to decline any discussion short of a full public capitulation. Suddenly, two other long-standing board members abruptly resigned, citing vague, personal family issues. The county, prompted by my formal grievance and the growing number of resident complaints, launched a full financial audit of the HOA's books. In a desperate move, Victoria called the sheriff's department, filing a complaint alleging that I had trespassed on HOA property and maliciously damaged their water line. The responding deputy, who seemed quite familiar with Victoria, likely thanks to the viral news story, calmly listened to her tirade. He then walked over to my property line, observed the shut-off valve clearly situated on my side, reviewed my property documents and the lack of any easement, and then gave Victoria a stern look. Turning back to me, he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod and said quietly, "Mr. Jenkins, I think half the folks in this town have been waiting years for someone to finally stand up to her properly." He filed a report stating no cause for action. Soon after, a formal court notice arrived. The lien placed on my property was declared unlawful and immediately voided. The $50,000 fine was officially dismissed with prejudice, and the ongoing county audit was formally expanded to investigate potential embezzlement by the HOA leadership under Victoria Sterling. The local news aired yet another follow-up story, gleefully contrasting the images of my dry, dusty, pool-less field with clips of Victoria's previous televised meltdown and reporting on the court's ruling against her. Neighbors honked supportively whenever they drove past my house. One morning, I found a case of bottled water on my porch with a handwritten note attached, "Stay hydrated, hero." Then came the final blow for Victoria. Kevin Marsh, while helping clear out the suddenly vacated HOA office, discovered a misplaced USB drive hidden in an old desk drawer. It contained hours of unedited audio recordings from past executive board meetings, including clear audio of Victoria bragging about fabricating fines to pressure residents, complaining about me specifically, and openly discussing her plans to target my land because she personally wanted it for a new community pavilion project. In court, Diane Foster masterfully dissected the entire fraudulent scheme. She played the most damning clips from the audio recordings, Victoria's own arrogant voice, plotting my financial ruin and admitting her motives. Kevin Marsh testified next, his voice steady and clear now, calmly exposing Victoria's pattern of bullying and coercion against him and other board members. The judge didn't hesitate. He ruled the lien and fine were entirely fraudulent, found Victoria Sterling personally liable, and ordered her to pay significant punitive damages out of her own pocket. He dissolved the current HOA board effective immediately and strongly recommended that the county prosecutors pursue criminal charges against Victoria for fraud and potential embezzlement. Victoria Sterling sat stunned and deflated in the courtroom, her face pale, her carefully constructed power completely evaporated. Neighbors who had attended the hearing quietly clapped as the judgment was read. Outside the courthouse, Sarah Miller rushed up with her microphone, asking for a statement. This wasn't about revenge, I told her simply. It was about standing up for what's right. It was about basic fairness and simple truth. Victoria Sterling resigned from the disgraced board before she could be formally removed by the court order. A new, interim HOA board was quickly formed, with a reluctant but determined Kevin Marsh stepping up to help lead the transition. I volunteered some of my engineering expertise to help the new board redesign the community's outdated irrigation system, ensuring that no water lines crossed private property without proper, legally recorded easements in place. For a while, some of the neighborhood kids took to calling me Pool Man, always with a mischievous grin. One morning, a small, bright blue plastic kiddie pool appeared mysteriously on my front lawn. It contained a single yellow rubber duck and a small, handmade sign stuck in the grass beside it. Caution, deep justice. I smiled and kept it there. Buddy, my loyal dog, occasionally lapped water from it like a king surveying his newly liberated domain. Victoria Sterling moved away shortly thereafter. Her house sold quickly and, according to neighborhood gossip, for well under its market value. At a neighborhood barbecue a few months later, celebrating the newly reformed HOA, Kevin Marsh came over and thanked me sincerely for showing everyone what standing up for yourself really means. I simply raised my glass of iced tea to him, perfectly content staying seated on my old porch swing. The imaginary $50,000 pool was long gone, but the fight for the truth had helped build something far more real and lasting. A neighborhood finally free to breathe, rooted in fairness and actual justice, not just arbitrary rules enforced by petty tyrants.